Hi, welcome to Astrology for Gann Traders. My name's Olga Morales, and today I have prepared another video about the shift of the lunar nodes moving into Aquarius and Leo axis after 18.61 years, which is like a really important cycle for financial astrology, for property, real estate, and also the economy. This was one of the first things I actually started researching when I got into W.D. Gann's work, because he had a financial timetable that actually was from 18 to 19 years. And so, of course, being the astrologer, I already knew what that was all about. And this is what it's all about. And the thing is, it's not just in financial world, it's also to do with ancient civilizations and stone circles, and it's actually everywhere, this cycle. So let me get started. This diagram here, I will show you more of it. It actually comes from the 17th century, and it perfectly shows exactly what this cycle is about. Okay, so let's look at it. So this is by Kircher. He was a Jesuit polymath, 1671, and it's all to do with the moon's declination, the nodal cycle plus eclipses. So you can see that there's a dragon, the head and the tail, and the body of the dragon, and all these they're all eclipses in here, okay? But also you can see that at certain times the height of the moon or the dragon's body is actually smaller than other times. And this is what the whole cycle is about. It's about lunar standstills, major and minor. And this, I love this diagram. I remember when I got it the first time, I thought, wow. And you can see where the eclipses are in the dragon's body. So eclipses can only happen in a certain band between 18 degrees, really, from the ecliptic. And that's where the word ecliptic comes from, because that's where eclipses occur. So the sun and the moon meet. To have a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse, they all have to be aligned. And so they're in the ecliptic, and this dragon's body is like the sine wave of the ecliptic. So basically, on the 27th of July, the nodes are going to move, the lunar nodes are going to move into a new axis, as I just said. The north node, which is the dragon's head, will move into Aquarius, and the tail will be in Leo. Now, remembering with the lunar nodes, they are always moving retrograde. Okay, so you can see we're moving into 29. This is a big shift. This is a big shift in our awareness, our consciousness, and many other things. Remembering that the moon has a big pull on the earth and on our emotions, everything really. So this is what the diagram of the serpent or the dragon really is showing. This is a graphic ephemeris that I made, and it shows the major and minor standstills, which is the declination of the moon, every 18.61 years, okay? So there'll be times when the moon goes beyond, the declination of the moon goes beyond that of the sun. The sun is really the tropic of Cancer is it's plus 23.5, and the tropic of Capricorn is minus 23.5. Now, there are times when the moon goes beyond that tropic, which is when it's out of bounds, but also it's called a major standstill, and it reaches peaks of 28.5 plus northern declination, and in the south it's minus 28.5. So these are called the major standstills. Then 9 years later, there's a minor standstill, goes below the 23, and it reaches 18.5. Okay, so these are really low moons. Now, this was obviously important to the ancient observers, and a lot of stone circles that I visited are aligned to this cycle. Okay, so what are the lunar nodes? This is my little animation. We've got the sun and the earth and the orbit. Then we have the moon going around the earth and its orbit. And so where it crosses the moon's orbit where it crosses the ecliptic, you have the north node. That's when it's going north declination, and when it's going south, you get the south node. Okay, so they're our nodes. So they're not actual planets. They're an intersection of two orbits, but they're very important for our, I suppose, with the Vedic astrologers, they treat them like planets, and they are a lot to do with our soul's destiny. They're very spiritual. It's a spiritual element in our charts, and they often have to do with also our past lives. And this is a diagram I got from a book called Predicting the Weather by the Moon by King Ring. He's from New Zealand, and he does weather forecasting using this cycle. If you want to go that way, the moon is obviously very important when it comes to agriculture. And so this is like minimum declination. You can see that the moon has a 5-degree extra latitude from the ecliptic. Okay, and that's what adds to it or subtracts from the 23. When it's maximum declination, about 9 years later, we have to add the 5 degrees to the 23 and we get 28. So that's when that's the major standstill, okay? And now this is very important for the stock market cycles, which I teach in my courses. I'm actually just finishing off my level 2, which will explain this a lot more if you've never heard about it. That's if you're interested in this sort of cycle analysis, which was Gann's work as well. What I've done here, I've actually plotted, it looks like a big mouth or lips, like the Rolling Stones, and the peak is here when it gets to its maximum lunar standstill, right? This is like in 1987, okay? And like it does have an effect on the cycles of emotion, obviously, because the moon rules emotion. And they say the stock market is really mass psychology. Most of the time it's manipulated anyway, but also it's fear and greed. And that is, based on our moon, our own moon, and also the moon in general. So this is like a really important cycle. And you can see here, I put in some pictures of Stonehenge, just the way when there's a low moon rise, so that would be the minor standstill, and when there's a major standstill, all the stones have been arranged to include this cycle. It's amazing. And then, as I love doing, because there's always clues everywhere, the tarot always tells us a lot of things, and usually it's number. And isn't it interesting that the moon is number 18 and the sun is number 19? Now, I've spoken about this many times, so we've got 3 cycles in here. We've got the nodal cycle, we've got the Saros cycle, and we've got the Metonic cycle, but they all involve the moon and the sun, and the tarot gives us the numbers, all right? And this is essentially Gann's financial timetable in code, right? So last year I went on an esoteric England and mystical Cornwall tour with Hayley Ramsey, and it was really magical. And we went to this stone circle called Merry Maidens, and exactly 19 stones around this circle, okay? And yeah, you can see them. And then there's a major alignment going right through here. And then also another place in Cornwall was called Boscawen Un. I don't know how to pronounce it, but another 19. But then there's this centre stone, which is really on an angle. That's me standing with it. It's quite a obvious angle, and I believe that's pointing maybe either it's fallen, but potentially pointing to a fixed star that was important to them. Okay. So these are not random, every time I get to a stone circle, I always count the stones around the circle. Now, the other thing I didn't mention is that at Stonehenge is also the 56 stones around the outside, which they would have been maybe it's pillars, but there's only evidence of the bottom part, like it looks like a blue stone. The 56, and like that's again got to do with eclipses. It's like an eclipse calculator. Even Gann talks about the great eclipses, and he puts it on page 56 in Tunnel Through the Air. There's nothing random here. Okay, these anytime Gann puts numbers on pages and Tunnel Through the Air, you have to have the original copy because he gives you clues on page numbers. Okay. Okay, next slide. So, in terms of your personal, how do the nodes influence us? I remember when I started studying astrology, when I used to do research for my classes with my teacher, I was very interested in the nodal cycle, and I wrote an article called "The Cycles of Destiny." And that's exactly what they are. This cycle going around your chart, remember it's going backwards. So it's almost like ruffling your feathers because as we as souls are supposed to be here on earth to evolve, so that the nodes are always moving around the opposite way. And Eberton talks about the nodes as making as associations, like people that we interact with. So the south node is supposed to represent your past, which is the tail, right, where we eliminate, whereas Rahu, the head of the dragon, is where we take nourishment, and that's supposed to be our future, right? So for the next 18 to 19 months, humanity begins a new chapter. We can look at it this. We're shifting into the Aquarius-Leo axis, okay? So in esoteric astrology, the south node is known as the tail, the dragon, or K2, represents our past, the qualities we've already developed, and karmic inheritance, familiar patterns, and for those who believe in reincarnation, as I do, the wisdom and attachments carried from previous lifetimes. So you feel comfortable with your south node because you've done it before. But it's not a growth point because you've already experienced it. It's almost like you got to let it go and move towards your north node. That's where this lifetime's about, where we're supposed to grow, right? So the south node also shows what we're being asked to release because it's a tail. Old habits, attachments that aren't doing any good anymore, the ways of living, it doesn't serve you anymore, and it might be limiting your spiritual growth. Whereas the opposite, the North Node, as I said, this is the head of the dragon, Rahu, and points towards our future. It's the direction of our evolution, the qualities that nourish the soul and encourage growth, even if they initially feel unfamiliar. Now, I was just looking at some quantum physics, talking about, how we live in quantum fields, and that, past, present, and future are all running simultaneously. And there was a message in this article I was reading, and it said something like, your gut feelings are quantum messages from your future self. And I believe that quote actually fits the lunar node axis perfectly because, the moon's always, when you have that intuition in your gut, it's telling you, remember, Cancer is all to do with the stomach, right? And you get a gut feeling, but it's also about messages from the future, from yourself, which is actually your north node. So we've got to listen to this, to our gut feeling. So we are moving as a whole from me, myself, and I, which is the Leo axis, to us, we, and together. And this is all to do with we're invited to shift our focus from personal to the collective. Leo reminds us of creativity, leadership, pride, recognition, and individual expression. At its highest, it represents courage and the heart. But when out of balance, it can become ego, status, personal drama, or the need for applause. So we're moving away from that, self-centered energy, moving towards the Aquarius one, which makes us think beyond ourselves, okay? It calls towards community, innovation, humanitarian ideals, friendship, higher knowledge, and contributing something meaningful to the collective. And it asks us, how can my unique gifts benefit humanity? I think that's a really important spiritual message from the nodes moving into these two, right? From self, it's all about me, to how can I be help the humanity and the collective. Okay, so it is a really nice balance. So what you can do with this is look at your own chart, because if you imagine that this axis is just moving um, into around your chart for the next 18 months, it will be entering, maybe it's already in there, um, two houses in your chart, and they will. One was asking you to let go and leave this behind, and the other one will be saying, no, this is where you should be doing. So those, I believe, the houses in this respect are actually more important than the actual signs for people, because the houses are personal to you. So you need to have a time chart, so you know where your ascendant is and you know where this axis is traveling through your chart. It's going to show you on a soul level where you can grow and where you can let go, eliminate that those things aren't serving you anymore. And remembering the next year, this year and next year, we've got a lot happening in the heavens that actually can be quite supportive for soul growth. Even though there's looks like there's chaos, if you just center on yourself and remember that quote about, you're getting quantum messages from a future self. It's really about thinking about what you really want for yourself and your future self, and then making that um, harnessing that energy every day, visualizing it, and saying the words out aloud, because you remember thoughts create, not just thoughts, words create. So I'm just learning that the word is more important. The thought helps, but you need to speak it. So yeah, and remembering that this has a lot to do with, cycles that have been known very anciently. I could list all these places that have encode the 18, 19-year cycle. There's so many of them, and I visited a lot of them. So that's, yeah. So anyway, if you're interested, please subscribe. I'm not just a financial astrologer. I really see myself as a researcher and teacher. I love anything to do with astrology, obviously, ancient mysteries, sacred geometry, Gann. I've spent the last 22 years of my life studying Gann. But, from an esoteric standpoint, hidden mystery, planetary cycles, and there's me at Stonehenge. You can see how big the actual megalithic stones are. And this was, you can't, unless you have a tour where you pay extra to go at sunrise or sunset, you can't actually get into the circle of stones. So I was lucky. I've been able to do that 3 times, even for the solstice. So yeah, though if you're interested, I do have a level 1 course, but that's just general getting into, that's really beginners. But level 2, I'm working on it at the moment. I'll have it available just when Mercury goes direct, because Mercury's been giving me a couple of issues with filming, with everything. I've just thought, let's just wait a little bit. So, yeah, thanks for listening.